Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. We are excited to have one of our favorite guests on. He's been appearing semi-regularly for the last several years on the show. Charlie Pierce writes a great political blog for Esquire.com. He's been a longtime journalist, author, sports nut, Dylan fan, and he knows a lot of things about a lot of things. He's my psychological morphine drip to all things political. And with just 18 days next to the election, we're going to be talking with Charlie for the whole show. You know, Charlie, it's funny. I was down in Minneapolis a few weeks ago, and I had this guy, big guy, trucker, I believe, came up to me with tears in his eyes and said, "When are you going to have Checkpoint Charlie Pierce back on your show?"
No, it's sir. When are you going to have Charlie on?
Which
you're going
would
to tell a sir, if you're going to tell a sir story, you got to have sir in it.
You know, and it would have been the first time anybody's ever called me sir. But yes, I believe that's what he did say. I was amazed that a guy that big.
Well, what's that great drive-by truckers lyric? Mr. Phillips, the only man that Jerry Lee would call sir.
Well,
no, I met Sam Phillips once.
Really?
Yeah, we were down. We were doing Wait, Don't Tell Me right at the beginning in Memphis, and they gave a part. It was at a public radio directors conference, and we did kind of a mock show for them as part of the after dinner entertainment one night. And they had a big reception on the roof of the Peabody Hotel.
Oh, fantastic.
And Sam was there. And I'm very proud of myself. I went up to him, I shook his hand, and I said, "Sir, thank you for screwing up the world in the best possible way you could." And he gave me a big hug and said, "That's my boy."
You know, I was at a radio conclave. They used to have it yearly in Minneapolis. I was there pushing my record, Whistling Past the Graveyard, that I just got done recording. And there was a man on there that just started his own radio show. You would know him. He was one of the Watergate plumbers. And so
Gordon Liddy?
I sat and I got a picture with G. Gordon Liddy. I've shared it over the years with some of my progressive friends, and they poo-poo it. But I said, no, this isn't a long tradition. Goes back to the picture of Elvis Presley and Richard Nixon.
Oh, absolutely, which I have hanging up right over my chair right now, by the way.
There you go. Take what you've gathered.
And I also have a picture of me at the Des Moines Holiday Inn, standing between Steve King and Louis Gohmert.
Whatever, is Louis still around?
No, Louis resigned from Congress. He's back in Texas doing God alone knows what.
Wow.
He didn't. He didn't run this time.
Wow.
I think the most frightening thing about Louis was that he used to be a judge.
Is that crazy?
I mean, I would not want to go before Judge Louis Gohmert. I really wouldn't. But it's always good to get your picture taken with crazy people. I mean,
well,
great conversation stuff. Great conversation starter.
I was down in Austin, Texas. God, when was it? 2008, I believe.
I have many memories of Austin where I can't exactly put the year.
But it's one of the most beautiful cities.
I love Austin. I really do. Austin almost makes the entire state of Texas worthwhile.
Yeah, well, it has a lot in common with the Twin Cities. Number one, a very progressive city on a river, great music scene. And I've always really felt at home down there. I was down, I believe I was playing at a South by Southwest gig, and there's the legendary restaurant. Have you ever been to Threadgill's in Austin?
Yes, I've been to Threadgill's. Yes.
And they had a version of Threadgills on the river now. It was a newer one. And the legendary Texas rocker Roky Erickson from the 13th Floor Elevators was going to be doing a comeback show after years of suffering from different psychological problems. Everybody was really excited, and I went down there to see the show, and the promoter saw me and kicked me off the site. He thought I looked like a legendary music bootlegger named Kilo. I don't think that was the only thing Kilo was involved with, was just taping shows. So he threw me off the site, and I was really PO'd. And I walked in, and I thought, well, I'm going to have dinner anyway. And who is sitting, waiting in line right in front of me to get a table? Karl Rove.
Really? At Threadgills?
Yeah, Threadgills. Karl.
Oh, man.
Rove, standing with a bunch of young Republicans waiting.
Did he leave a trail of like slime behind him?
No, but I'll tell you what,
Did you have to watch your step?
What was interesting, I got my second Elvis with Nixon photo with Karl Rove, and behind us, there was an old vintage poster, Jerry Lee Lewis poster, and so you could see right over Rove's shoulder part of the poster that just said "Killer."
That's nice. I like that.
It was another incredible moment.
My wife got me, and I don't have it hanging up yet because I haven't found a place for it. But I have a poster that my wife gave me from the Republican convention in the ones I didn't go to, 1998, I guess. No, 1988, excuse me. A poster of B.B. King playing guitar with Lee Atwater.
You know what? I wrote a letter to the editor to the Minneapolis Star Tribune, now called the Minnesota Tribune, years ago, and I said, say what you want about this misogynistic, racist cat. He has great taste in American blues music.
Yeah, apparently he had. I have a picture I took of his grave in South Carolina.
Wow.
His grave is about 30 feet from the famous female wrestler, the Fabulous Moolah.
Really?
Who has an enormous tomb. She's buried with her husband and her tag team partner.
Wow. God, I could dig that big time.
I just went out to see Atwater, make sure he was still dead. And
where was
I turned around, there was this huge, like, Romanesque tomb. And I said, wow, I don't know who that is, but it must be somebody, it must be at least a governor, So I walk up there, and it's the Fabulous Moolah. And on the top of the tomb, it says Moolah.
What city was that in, Charlie?
It was in South Carolina. Was it Charleston or Columbia? I can't remember. I think it was outside Columbia.
Wow. Well, a lot of these people that have been listening to my Wall of Power Radio Hour for the last 10 years, they're used, Charlie, to what I call the weave, right? I start talking about
the weave, yes.
I start talking about one thing with a guest, and then we go to another thing, and yet another thing. Seems very incongruous, but by the end, we're going to tie it all together. But you've been on my show before. You understand the weave. No,
it's a free flowing exchange of ideas.
Hey, I got to say, you wrote an article in Esquire.com, kind of harshed my mellow a little bit, Charlie. You were talking about, you thought a bit of that vibe that the Kamala and crew came out of the Democratic National Convention, you thought was kind of dissipating to some degree. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, but I don't think it's as big a problem as I thought when I wrote that. I think, it's been. I mean, it was bound to. I mean, it was such an incredible high coming out of the convention. It couldn't last. I mean, nobody could. Just not the way politics works anymore. You can't stampede the country like William Jennings Bryan or somebody did.
Right.
But they've shown themselves to be really, really good at the grind it out part of the campaign.
What did you think of the
right at the beginning of it? At the beginning of it, I thought they were riding the emotional wave a little bit too long. But once they stopped, once they got down, I'd say right about the time of the only debate that the vice president had with the former president, right about that time, they really got down into the nuts and bolts and, 3 yards in a cloud of dust political campaigning. And I think they've been very, very good at that.
I'm really amazed at they're really going after the Gen Z vote. They're doing the podcasts and the TikTok videos and the whole 9 yards. What did you think of the interview she did with Brett Baier on Fox News?
Well, I mean, I believe, a lot of people say she went on Fox to like attract conservative voters. I don't think so. I think she went on Fox, first of all, to dope slap Brett Baier, and she did that. And I also think she went on Fox to get in the former president's head.
Yeah.
I think it was a magnificent piece of trolling. Plus, she was great. I don't know why she doesn't do like one TV interview a day. She's very, very good.
Well, and I love to see Kamala get angry. I thought that was that old, her federal prosecutor chops come out.
Well, when she caught she caught Baier, using a barbered video clip to like soft pedal Trump talking about enemies within.
Yeah,
that is going to be the only moment people remember from that. It's like Tim Walz asking J.D. Vance if Trump had really lost in 2020, and Vance not being able to answer. That's the only moment from that debate anybody remembers.
Right. Well, I
think she got what she needed out of the appearance. I was happy she was doing it in advance, and I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Well, I'm very proud of. I've been a big Tim Walz guy. I'm never moving out of Minnesota. It's people like Tim Walz the reason why, but I think he's been doing a bang up job on the stump.
Yeah, I mean he's out there looking like like your grandfather on the first day of duck season, but he's really been effective.
Yeah,
and I think they're using him very well.
Let's
because as my friend, the political genius from Nebraska, Jane Klebb puts it, there are rural votes to be had. You just got to go get them.
Yeah, totally agree. He is the real deal. Hunter, fisherman, and dog lover. I mean, that's all I need to know. He's a dog lover.
Yeah, I just found out that at Marquette, where I went to college, there's a big on-campus church that's run by the Jesuits who teach at Marquette. And it just got a new pastor. And the new pastor did an interview with, I guess, the Alumni magazine. I read it online. And the new pastor is not only a hockey fan, he reads Hunter Thompson. A Jesuit who reads Hunter Thompson. That's freaking deadly.
That is the modern world we've been waiting for, Charlie Pierce. Hey, let me take a left turn here. Now that the great Pete Rose has passed away, he had a lifetime ban. They wouldn't let him into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now that he's passed away, do you think they should let him in?
Yes, I always thought so. I think it. The guy. I think he was. I would think he was a little overrated as a player, to be perfectly honest with you. I think the whole. I think the whole Charlie Hustle thing was kind of a white hype, but he did hit the ball safely more than anybody else in the history of baseball. And to have him not be there among the, gypsies, tramps, and thieves that are already in there is just silly to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do to him the same scurvy trick they pulled on Arvin Miller, which is to induct him after he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had a much bigger baseball death up here. We lost the great Louis Tiant.
Right. Talk about Louis. I remember him as a kid. Really phenomenal player. Tell us about Louis Tiant.
Well, he started out as an incredible fastball pitcher on the Cleveland Indians. He and Southern Sam McDowell. And in 1968, he had the second best year as a pitcher behind Bob Gibson. He lost the American League Cy Young to Denny McLain because Denny McLain won 30 games that year. But and I saw him win his 25th at Fenway, by the way.
Wow.
Anyway, but then he blew his arm out. And he was at the end of his rope. He went back to the minors. And, in fact, it was the Minnesota Twins who got him back into Major League Baseball. They gave him a minor league contract. And they traded him, or they sold him or whatever, or put him on waivers, and the Red Sox picked him up. And then from 1972 until he went, God help us, he went to the Yankees in 1979, he became an absolute folk hero in Boston. The funky wind-up, the, giant, getting photographed in the shower with the giant Cuban cigar, getting Teddy Kennedy and Tip O'Neill to get his parents out of Cuba so they could watch him pitch.
That's politics.
You talk about Pete Rose. Pete Rose complained to the umpire in the first game of the 1975 World Series because Louis had them all on a string. They didn't know where the ball was coming from. Overhand, sidearm, 3/4. He changed his release point. He, hesitated in the middle of his windup. He'd bob his head. Roger Angel said sometimes he looked like a guy trying to catch a squirrel on his roof.
Hey, talk a little bit
and
about
more
Roger.
to the point, he became a Latin American superstar in Boston and was the first crack in the Red Sox's sorry history on race.
Wow.
It was Louis Tiant who paved the way for Manny Ramirez, Pedro Martinez, David Ortiz. And I remember one day at the World Series, the American League playoffs, Pedro was pitching against Roger Clemens, and all over Fenway Park, people were waving Dominican flags.
Wow.
And they weren't all Dominican. And I said, I thought I would never see that at Fenway. And it was Louis Tiant who first started breaking that down because people loved him. And then after he retired, he came back, he moved to Maine, and he used to be like the maitre d' at Fenway Park.
Wow.
Especially after Johnny Pesky died. Johnny Pesky was the primary maitre d', but then Johnny died, and Louis took over, and you'd come in, hello, Keed, how are you?
Wow.
Telling stories about his dad playing in the Negro Leagues, and he was just a barrel of fun. And, of course, we lost him a couple of weeks after Pete Rose. And I think they both should be in the Hall of Fame.
And you lost, well, America lost, but you lost another great Massachusetts resident, Ethel Kennedy.
Yeah, she's really from Virginia, but okay, we'll take her. She was more of a Kennedy than a lot of the Kennedys were, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, she was an interesting character. She had, God knows, enough tragedy in her life. I mean,
Yeah.
her husband gets shot, and a couple of her sons died. One was an overdose. The other one skied into a tree. And then there's Bobby Jr., who, who knows what that's all about. And,
Well, where did it, I have seen nothing about RFK Jr. in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I'm sure he's, mourning a bit. And of course, he got involved in this very bizarre tabloid thing with Ryan Lizza and Olivia Nuzzi, both of whom I know, by the way.
Really?
And he got involved in this incredible tabloid nonsense. So I'm sure somebody is keeping him under wraps at the moment.
And speaking of weirdos in the Trump orbit, let's talk a little bit about you had tweeted something several days ago that I totally agree with. Isn't it time to deport Elon Musk?
Yeah, that's actually a not unoriginal thought on my part. It's actually something Keith Olbermann said on his podcast, but I borrowed it to the blog. I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't question his immigration status. He's screwing with the election. He's a glorified rat humper. I think we should, and now, of course, because of John Roberts, the president of the United States can do pretty much anything he wants.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think he'd ever do it because Biden's not that kind of guy, and it would raise too much of a stink at the last minute. But I don't see any reason why we shouldn't question it.
Well, he's got, his big.
Now he's talking to the head of CNN.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Can you imagine what that would be like? Oh my God.
He's, he talks censorship. That's his big deal. That guy blocks more guys on Twitter than anybody in the history of the of Twitter/X.
Yeah, he owns the platform, and he doesn't like criticism. It's really not where you want to be if you're going to own an internet platform.
Well, and he's got absolutely no history of American democracy or American politics. He's absolutely
and he's not, as you said, he's not particularly bright, and he's allied himself with the worst forces in our politics right now. So, yeah, as I said, I wouldn't mind seeing him in front of an immigration judge, preferably a Spanish one.
From Charlie Pierce's mouth to God's ears. We're going to take a little break and be back with Mr. Pierce for the rest of the show on the Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Wall of Power Radio Hour.
All right, you are back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. My guest, the esteemed Charlie Pierce. We call these episodes Checkpoint Charlie. He is my psychological morphine drips for all things political and more. Charlie, did you get a chance to watch any of that Ted Cruz-Colin Aldrad debate?
Oh, I watched it all. Are you kidding? That one set the Orgasmatron to about 11. I don't know if Colin Aldrad will win. He's operating, against muscle memory with Republicans in Texas. But if you wanted to see Ted Cruz get called up for every cheap punk thing he's done in politics, and there are a lot of them, that was the debate for you.
Yeah, he was
the old linebacker. The old linebacker came in on an all-out blitz.
And I'm reminded of, you posted a great picture. I just love those football players. Well, any athlete, there's a lot of smart athletes out there, of course, but Colin seems to be so brilliant. And it reminded me of the picture, the Twin Cities Marathon was just run a couple weeks ago. And every year, Alan Page, who is not only one of my favorite Minnesota Vikings, part of the Purple People Eaters, but also Supreme Court Justice for the state of Minnesota, always takes out his tuba and plays as runners.
I saw that picture. That's why I posted that picture. And I believe I captioned it, "Put this man in all the halls of fame."
Absolutely. No, it's just...
I mean, what? I get that tuba. Who knew? I mean, I knew he was, obviously I knew what a football player he was. I knew that he had been a Supreme Court justice. I knew he ran marathons after he retired from football, basically to lose weight, I guess. And I knew that he has his own, like, not private, but his own civil rights museum in his house.
Yeah, I've seen...
But I never knew he played the tuba.
Yeah, very talented man. He was part of the Fearsome Foursome with a guy I got to know, Jim Marshall, who has the record.
And Carl Eller, and I can't remember the fourth one. Who was the fourth one?
God, let me think. White guy.
Yes.
It'll come to me before it's done.
It won't come to me. I'm blank. I remember Jim Marshall, unfortunately, because he ran the wrong way that time. And Eller was a beast. I mean, those guys were great.
And Eller, a friend of mine went out with Carl. He was a great artist. He used to do a lot of ceramic pottery and things like that. Really? I used to bump into him at the post office. We were both sharing.
So the entire Fearsome Foursome were like Renaissance men.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, Jim Marshall, I think he still has the record for most consecutive NFL starts. And he was a big dude. And we used to drink together at a place called Eli's Bar down on 12th and Hennepin in Minneapolis. And I always loved hanging out with Jim because he was just a childhood hero of mine, and still looked really good.
Oh, you know who it was? It just came to me. No, wait a minute. No, he played for the Rams. Never mind.
But anyway, when I was a kid, they used to the Vikings used to do their preseason training at Bemidji State College, where my grandparents lived in Bemidji, where my mother grew up. So I still have a beautiful rookie signed photo of my favorite quarterback of all time, Fran Tarkington, that I cherish. But I followed, this was back then when both the Minnesota Twins and the Minnesota Vikings, all these guys lived in Minnesota all year round. So they weren't only, stars on both our favorite teams, but they were true Minnesotans. And I remember when I was, 12 or 13, it was during the preseason, and they were interviewing. Now the Vikings were training down in Mankato, and one of the sports.
Wait a minute, time out. I got it. It just popped into my head. Gary Larson.
There you go. Gary Larson, yeah.
And I believe, you could check this, I believe he was one of the plaintiffs in the big concussion lawsuit against the NFL.
Oh, cool. But not the Gary Larson.
Cool because,
not the Gary Larson. Not the Gary Larson from Far Side.
No, not Gary Larson from the Far Side, no.
But anyways, so the sports writer asked Marshall, he said, Marshall, he goes, you look like you're really dogging it out there during these workouts. And Marshall had a great line. He goes, man, there's only so much tread on the tire. So every time I'd sidle up to Jim at the bar, I'd always buy him whatever he was drinking. I believe it was a martini guy. I'd go, Jim, how's the tread?
There you go.
And there was still a lot of tread on that tire. Just an incredible guy. See, what do you think? Let's sum up a little bit about. We had some good news down with the Georgia elections and the ruling in that when they were trying to rat it all, gum it up down there. What exactly went on?
I'm sorry, I lost a piece of that question. Can you ask me again?
We had some good news with they were trying to come up the works down and for the Georgia elections, but we had a judge stand up to the tomfoolery. What exactly was that?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, Georgia's got this, after the 2020 election, Georgia got this weird, Georgia instituted this weird state election board, which was like 4 people, 3 of them dedicated election deniers and Trumpers. And they gave them the job of setting the rules for the next election, all of which would benefit the former president. So one of them was that every precinct in the state had to hand count their ballots on election day, election night, which would have just mucked up everything.
Yeah.
And a local district judge said, "No, this is crazy. First of all, it's 17. It's like 20 days before the election. You can't do this. You're going to cause chaos," which, of course, was the entire point of it. But so he slapped it down last week, which was a good thing.
How many states do you think we're going to be dealing with this, what I call election interference, day of and afterwards? Because, if Trump...
Well, I mean, you can name the battlegrounds, all of them, okay? Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Well, Georgia being a battleground now these days is really kind of interesting. The rest, I mean, there'll be monkey shines, I think, in every state, even here. But I don't think, any state with a Democratic legislature isn't going to let it happen. So we'll see.
Now, in 2022, all the polls and all of the pundits were going, there's going to be a massive red wave. And, of course, it was just the opposite. Talk about this whole concept of polling the red wave.
Yeah, this is Simon Rosenberg, who serves the same function for me during election time as I do for your radio show. I go to Simon's website or his Twitter feed just to calm down. He invented the term. Basically, what you do is you concoct a bunch of polls, Americans for Truth and Beauty, and you run a poll, and the Republican candidate, gets, polls out at like 63%. And if you do enough of them, they get tossed into the poll aggregates that newspapers use. So you get the impression of a Republican sweep. And then come election day, it doesn't pan out because most of these polls are, all of these polls are like counterfeit and have been through the entire election cycle. So Simon is kind of a guide. Simon's feed is kind of a guide through, hey, here's a poll from, the Americans for Truth and Beauty, and he points out that it's, all funded by the Koch brothers or something.
Right.
And he's dead set against using betting markets in a poll aggregate, and he's dead set against, poll aggregates who are just this big, like, sink trap of bad information. So
what is Rosenberg's website?
Oh, I don't know if he has a website. Let me find his Twitter feed, which I can do right here on my laptop. This is great radio, by the way.
We keep it real here in the Wall of Power Radio.
We do. This is live radio, people. Live to tape. Simon Rosenberg. It's at Simon, capital W, capital D, capital C.
Good. Yeah, I've seen him on.
And another one, of course, is the great Mark Elias, who's been going around the country, beating election interference laws in court for 5 years now.
That guy's a bulldog.
Just won another one in Arizona.
What do you think over all the Senate prospects? Like, what do you think of Tester in Nebraska?
No, Chester in Montana.
And Montana, excuse me.
We'll get to Nebraska in a minute. I hope John wins. I think he's of all of them, I think he's probably in the most trouble. But I really hope he can pull it out. I think, Timmy Baldwin, I think, is pretty safe now. Obviously, Kerry Lake's going to get buried in Arizona. I'm not even worried about that. Who am I missing? I think Bob Casey will win pretty easily in Pennsylvania. They nominated a bunch of crazy people again.
Right.
The
Minnesota GOP has nominated this guy named Rice White, who is an ex-NFLer, who is so radical, he's not even on the GOP website in Minnesota, and he's running for Senate against Amy Klobuchar. That to me is a perfect example. Look, you're going to lose against Amy Klobuchar, unless Hubert Humphrey comes back from the dead and runs as a Republican. But, nominate somebody who can play, Right.
Jeez, Mary. The guy running against Sherrod Brown's the one I was trying to think of in Ohio. I think he's going to squeak through. The guy in Nebraska who's running an independent, this guy Osborne.
Yeah, right.
Who all of a sudden is caught up with Deb Fischer. He's running as a complete independent. He's saying he's not going to caucus with either party in the Senate. He's an old union guy. That's the way he, built his political organization. He's very, very much heavy on income inequality as an issue. And if they turn out that one congressional district, Nebraska 02, that's the blue dot around Omaha, he could beat her.
Wow.
He was on with Chris Hayes the other night, and he's really interesting. I don't know how you can function as a senator not caucusing with either party, but I'll tell you what, if he goes in as a clear independent and it's a 50-50 tie or a 51-50 Senate, he's going to have a lot of leverage.
With 18 days to the election, Mr. Charlie Pierce, what's your overall vibe? What's your crystal ball telling you?
Well, since I threw my crystal ball away in 2016, I've been reading, tea leaves and the entrails of birds ever since. I think Vice President Harris wins. I think the Democrats will do better in the House than they think, but I don't know if they'll have enough to take the House back. And I think they're going to hang on in the Senate by 1 or 2 votes.
Well,
I'm back in the optimistic side of things.
I'll take that. And folks that are listening to the show.
And don't bet on that, by the way. I'm not responsible.
Now people that have been listening to the show.
This is for amusement only, as they used to say on the old football cards.
Well, now as we come to the end of the Wall of Power Radio, people once again have experienced the Metsa weave, and we've been able to cover a lot of subjects with our guest, Charlie Pierce. We always enjoy having him on. We're going to have you on the week after the election and compare notes. But we've got a few minutes left. We lost one of America's greatest songwriters, a man that literally changed Nashville. Tell us a little bit about your love for the great Chris Christopherson.
Well, for a while, it was odd, and I'm not going to let you get away without telling your Farm Aid story. But I always liked him as a songwriter when he was young. I really liked him as a songwriter. I didn't necessarily like him as a performer. His voice, I don't know, it just didn't click with me. But as he got older and his voice got a little roughened and a little wearier, I really saw what everybody else was talking about.
Yeah, he really grew into it. Well, my Farm Aid story, Charlie.
I love the thing he did with Johnny Cash and Willie and Waylon Jennings.
Oh, The Highwayman. That's one of the greatest songs ever written. Thank God for Jimmy Webb. But my friend Tom Arnold, David, New York Times journalist who wasn't with the Times yet, David Carr and myself used to get in a little trouble. We'll have a lot of fun in the early to mid 80s in Minneapolis. Tom went on to marry the Lucille Ball of the comedy world, Roseanne Barr, and they were invited to MC Farm Aid 5 in 1992. I'd written a song called Ferris Wheels on the Farm about the farm issue. I released it as a 45 single, sent it to Tom to see if he could get it to Willie Nelson and get me on the show. Well, he did get the single to Willie, and I doubt if Willie listened to it. He probably rolled joints on it. God bless him. And the next thing I knew, I was on the show. I was supposed to sing that song, but I had just written another song of mine 2 months earlier, and I asked myself, what would Woody Guthrie do? Play the song I was supposed to sing or play my new song, Jack Ruby, at Texas Stadium, a 15-minute cab ride to Dealey Plaza? And I did. I played my song, Slow Justice, and Jack Ruby. When I got off the stage with my guitar player, Emmanuel Kiriakou, we walked by Willie's bus, and Chris Christopherson got off the bus, ran up to me, put his arms around me, and said, "Man, I have no idea who you are, but I haven't heard songs like that in years."
Well, that's a moment, isn't it?
We got a great photo of it, and it's the kind of moments a musician like me, but has been close to it a few times. That's why you do it. Charlie, we're going to go out with a little Chris Christopherson. We hope to have a great conversation not long after November 5th, but we want to thank you for another great episode of Checkpoint, Charlie. And you hang in there, brother, and I hope you're enjoying the fall as much as we are here in Minnesota.
You getting everything? You getting everything winterized at the mansion?
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Got the storms in?
Oh yeah, we got the storms in. I got the garage. That's all I'm worried about. The garage has an electric door, and I did, and I got my snowblower. That's what it's called. I got my snowblower fixed. So bring it on, baby.
Oh, that's okay. That's all you need. All right, my friend. We'll talk later.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Good night.
Okay. See ya.
Busted flat in Baton Rouge and heading for the trains. Feeling nearly faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed a diesel down just before it rained. Took us all away to New Orleans. I took my harpoon out of my dirty red bandana and was blowing sad while Bobby sang the blues. With them windshield wipers slapping time and Bobby clapping hands, we finally sang a velvet song that driver knew. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing ain't worth nothing, but it's free. Feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues. Feeling good was good enough for me. Good enough for me and Bobby McGee. From the coal mines of Kentucky to the California sun, Bobby shared the secrets of my soul. Standing right beside me, Lord, through everything I've done. Every night she kept me from the cold.
Every night she kept me from the cold. Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metsa, engineered by Brett Johnson. We'd like to thank our guest, Charlie Pierce. Always such a pleasure having him on. You can follow me at paulmetsa.com. They got my books and records down at the Electric Fetus there in Minneapolis. Go pick one up. It's Christmas time is right around the corner. Thanks for listening, folks. Remember to get out there and vote. Talk to a Trumper and make them change their evil ways. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.
Someday the high